Hi, everyone. Welcome to Tini Talks. My name is Tini Fadzillah from the Coach Partnership, and I'm your host. So today we're joined by Jim Smith, who I have known for, how long have I known you? Years.
Since program one.
Oh my God. That's like more than 10 years, I think. Is it?
Wow, then. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So here's the cool thing about these podcasts that I do is basically it's an excuse for me to hang out with my cool friends who are also very wise. And today we're joined by Jim, who is also the executive happiness coach. Okay. So let me give you a little bit of background on Jim, and then we're going to dig deep into this topic called happiness. All right. So Jim is a global executive coach, health and wellness coach, author, international speaker, and troublemaker. His passion is to create a happier world and workplace, one leader at a time. Jim has coached leaders from 33 countries and 6 continents to balance their lives, upgrade their confidence and executive presence, and build positive workplace cultures. Jim lives in a multi-generational compound filled with love and good food, dances a little every day, and worships dark beer, dark coffee, and dark chocolates. This is your quote of the day? Is that the dance of the day?
I danced earlier.
All right, so why don't we jump in, and we'll start with this title or this brand, Executive Happiness Coach. So tell us more about that. Why that?
Okay, let me give you a short form. So, for many years, when I was younger, I suffered from depression. Actually, tried to take my own life when I was in my teens. So that's not a happy start, right? I wasn't successful. I fell into a field of study around something that was very obscure at the time, optimism. And over the years, learned about the work of Martin Seligman, who was a psychologist who
Yep.
was making his living at the time studying learned helplessness in humans. And he was the first person to take something in the field of psychology and flip the question around. He was the first guy to say, well, if all these things we do as psychologists can help people go from broken to whole, what happens if we take whole people and apply the same techniques? Do they go from whole to better? And so his research moved from learned helplessness to asking, well, can we learn optimism? Can we learn, other more desirable emotions? And so he's widely acknowledged as the father of positive psychology. I began following him years before happiness broke on the scene. And through that and a lot of the other work that I was doing, I gradually learned things that helped me kind of renegotiate the way I was making my way in the world. And so by the time positive psychology kind of dawned on the world, which was 2002, 2003, when he published Authentic Happiness, I was there. I was in the very first cohort of coaches and therapists that he trained as certified authentic happiness coaches based on the
Wow.
work in his book.
Right. Can I just pause you just
So,
for 1 minute, Jim?
sure.
So just to go back, I'm curious about the transition that you made, or what did you change your mind about in your teenage years when you started to follow Martin Seligman? Like what started to shift for you?
Well, number one, I had a couple of good like my family did not know about
Mm,
this
mm,
attempt.
mm,
Um, some friends knew, and those are the
mm.
people who knew. And they, especially this one friend, Mary, kind of a long story, but Mary actually became a nun. So I think she was just walking with God all the time when we were in that time. And she basically said to me, well, If you are unsuccessful, it's obviously a sign that God has other plans for you. I'm like, okay, I'll go with that at the time. And so that started me on this path of looking for the answer to that question. What else am I supposed to be here for? Okay.
Okay.
And university for me was a time of discovering who I was and
Mm.
finding answers to that. I mean, along with I was one of those people who went into school and changed majors like you can't believe how many times. I came out of that with a better understanding of who I was and who I could be. I think that is an experience that is common to a lot of people who go to university who don't really know what they want to be when they grow up, but they discover a lot of stuff anyway along the way,
Right. Right.
accidentally.
Right.
So that was me. And I came out and then I got married and I got a job, and it was with a really good company that was very creative and that exposed me to a lot. It was a very fast growing company, and I rotated through many different functional areas and became a generalist leader, so to speak. I was actually leading people in functions where I didn't even know what they did, but I had acquired these skills that were, that could kind of make me successful anywhere.
Right.
And that really started to connect me with what I believe was my purpose, which is to help build better cultures and help give people a better experience of life at work,
Right.
not to be the smartest person in the room, but to be the best listener, if you will,
Right.
in the
So it
room.
sounds like purpose fueled that trajectory. It sounds to me as I listen to you.
I would not have characterized it that way when I was in the middle of it.
Right.
In 1984, so when I was 6, 7 years into my career and still a fairly young guy, I was trying to figure this out. I had a boss who um, he brought in the Franklin Company. This was before Franklin and Covey merged and formed a time management company. But he brought in these folks to do some seminars, and they sat us down. So that was the year I remember I was 28 that year. A lot of things happened that year. I got my MBA. I had a heart attack. That's another whole story. And I went through this seminar on defining your values and finding your purpose. This is years before it became a trendy thing. And I defined my core values, which I still own to this day. There have been a few tweaks along the way, but it was the first time I really said, well, what is important to me? And because of my past history, happiness was my first and has remained my highest personal core value. I mean, that's driven a lot of the work that I've done in my
Yeah,
work. Yeah.
totally. So what is happiness?
When I define happiness, there's two definitions I like to use. One is a dictionary definition, just my
Right.
favorite dictionary definition. Happiness is the quality or state of being joyous, glad, or contented. And I love that definition because it it pulls happiness into here. Like
Your heart?
it's inside of me, right?
Uh-huh.
It's
Okay.
inside of me. It's not out there. It's
Right.
not something you have to find. You've already got it.
Yep.
And then the other definition that I really love is one that I created through my own work, which is happiness is wanting what you have.
Ooh, I love that. Ooh. So for you, what is that? What does that evoke? The second definition.
The second definition is really foundational to my personal and my business mantra, which is that happiness is a decision, not an event.
Mm,
It's not something that happens to you. It's a choice you make to pause and in this moment say, I got this, or
yeah.
this is nice. right? Happiness happiness is giving ourselves permission to, in this moment, appreciate, be grateful, pause, and look around for the good stuff.
Mm. Mm.
It's a distinction I make around happiness is that it's not a place to live. It is
Mm.
a very
Yeah.
desirable emotion,
Yeah.
but it's not a place to live. If you live in happiness is when you stop and say, this is enough. I'm good. I'm content right now. I'm full. This is great. And if you live in happiness all the time, what happens to ambition? What happens to taking care of things? What happens to, um, taking righteous action for the things that you need to have? Yet it's important because when we do take action and we do achieve our goals, we need to be able to pause for a moment and say, wow, isn't it great that I just did that? Before we move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Two things come up for me, which is really interesting. And for the listeners, if you've listened to previous podcasts, you'll hear that there's a theme around interpretation. There's a theme around events occur, um, and then I have the power to interpret it in a way, right? And as we say, we assess it, our assessments, right? And so it sounds to me like this is what you're talking about as well, which is I'm choosing something occurs, and I can choose happiness as my response to it, or peace, as the case may
Mm-hmm.
be, like I'm good, satisfaction, peace. Um, yeah. The other
Yeah.
thought that comes to my mind is, can happiness as an emotion live hand in hand with what we would call opposing emotions? So can happiness exist if I'm really angry about something, or I feel there's injustice, or I feel, yeah, is there a space for the two to coexist? Two as a
Absolutely.
minimum. I mean, it could be, yeah. Could you tell us more about that? How
Or
could
even
they?
more,
Yeah, or
even
even
more than
more,
that.
right?
Well, the founder of Newfield, Julio Alaya, often refers to the bubbling stew pot of emotions that we live in.
Yeah.
We are rarely in one at a time. We are more often than not in this stew pot of many different emotions, and they might all be of the same flavor, like joy, optimism, happiness, contentment, fulfillment, mercy, forgiveness. Those are all the positive ones, right, that we call positive. But as you point out, there's not necessarily positive or negative. There's more desirable. Let me give you an example of a funeral,
Mm.
because I've attended a number of those recently, and uh, in within my culture, within my family culture, we are really, really big on posters and videos at funerals. So when you go to a wake
Mm.
or you go to a funeral service,
Yeah.
there is deep sadness. We've just lost someone we loved. There's going to be a big hole here. At the same time, as you're standing in line to go through the receiving line to offer your condolences to the family, there's posters up here and there's photo albums of joyous moments in their life. My my uncle died a couple of months ago. He was married to my mom's only sister, and so as we're going through the line, and we're very sad Uncle Bob died, um, we come across this one set of prints from the 1950s when both my mom and my aunt got married. And we're like, oh my gosh, there's mom. She was an attendant in my aunt's wedding. And there's, oh my gosh, a picture of my father on the dance floor. We were laughing and joking, and we were actually pulling out our cameras and taking pictures of the pictures. It's like, oh, I don't have a print of that. And we're at a funeral, right?
Mm. That's a great example. Mm.
Another example for me is um, I've done a lot of advocacy work in the space of justice and social injustice and
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter and
Yeah.
LGBTQ spaces. Um, I'm trying to get training as an advocate. I'm a privileged older white male. There's so much that I have that's available to me, and I'm trying to figure out ways to use my power and privilege to help others. And I've been doing that for a number of years. I've lost track of how many times I've been in conversations with people where I'm I and others in the room are trying to hold this really deep, righteous anger about how broken systems are and how someone's not listening. And this is wrong, what's happening here. But then to have something happen and be able to also access joy and excitement that this breakthrough happened, or that we're getting a conversation with this other person where it might make a difference. Uh, but still holding the context that things are broken and we need to keep working on it, right? So corralling that anger in a way that will help us propel forward without it overwhelming our capacity for being excited and enthusiastic about this other opportunity that's opened up to us.
Right. It's interesting because some of you may have heard me speak to Kelly in a different podcast, but she always talks about having two hands. And in both hands could be holding two different conversations or two different narratives. And so as human beings, we have the complexity and the capacity to hold paradox, right? And so that's what I'm hearing you say. And that's really interesting. How would you work with a client who comes in grappling with seeking happiness like it's a destination?
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard you say earlier was happiness is not a place that we want to be living from all the time. Was that?
It's a,
Yeah. So
well, right.
how would you work with
That,
someone?
so, so one way to describe it is it's not a place to live, it's a place to visit.
Mm,
And much of my work in the space of emotional intelligence and positive psychology is helping people develop the capacity to get there. Right?
mm,
It's like calm. Um, when we do work in the body with different archetypes and energies, and there's resolute and openness and stability and flexibility, and then in the middle we've got that crossover point, center. I also call it the place of choice. If and so many people don't know how to find calm or choice, and it's something we teach them. We teach them breath work. We teach them how to kind of pull back from everything else and come to that middle place where you then have equal access to everything else. So much of the work that I do is helping people from that place then find their way to, well, what does happiness feel like in your body? How does it show up? And what are some of the things you can actually do in your body or with your body to put on happiness? I do a
mm,
lot of speaking, and
mm.
I introduce people to what I call a happy body. And just without going through the whole exercise, it's essentially
Or we
my
can.
or we can. Okay, all right. So
Yeah.
it's
Then the
it's just this
listeners, you
quick.
guys can, yeah.
Sure. So I invite you to stand up if you can, or you can do this seated. So let's just draw your attention to your feet, and place them shoulder width apart, which if you were standing would allow your body to be very balanced and strong. Okay. So every emotion shows up in the body in a certain way and causes us to do things. Many of the emotions that give us access to power and confidence, things like that, do this to the body, right? They open up our body and ground it. So find your roots, then sit as or stand as tall as you can. Just use your whole spine. And notice that when you do that, your shoulders drop, your chest opens up, and you expose your heart. And when you expose your heart, you open up access to connecting with other people and to allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to care. Okay? If you're standing, be aware of not putting your hands in front of your body right now. Just let them kind of hang in neutral position. So now just take a breath into your deep belly. Okay? Notice how that just lets go of a little tension in your body. All right? So let's call this a calm, stable body that for most people is a body of confidence or assertiveness. You can access your power here without pushing on other people, right? So now you just add one thing to this body to build a happy body. And I can see you doing it right now, Tini. A smile, right?
Yeah.
You take this body and you add a smile to it. So, your chin's up, you're looking at the horizon, you're making eye contact with other people. If you put this body on when you're having a bad day and walk around in it for just 2 minutes, you will start to feel better. And if you can make contact with other people and smile at them, they will smile back at you because it's a human thing. We do that. We respond automatically to a smile, which then spirals your mood up.
That's fantastic.
Now, what's interesting is, of course, we can take this same technique and I can put you into anger. I could put you into sadness. We know we can do that. If I made you small and tight and got you to breathe in a very shallow way, we could put you into anxiety, right?
Yeah.
So it's using this tool we have in a way that you can put it on until your body knows how to find it and recognize it.
Practice.
Oh my gosh.
And you practice, practice, right? Yeah. And you practice it because this state may not be so accessible to some of you who are listening. You might be used to a different body. Try this on and see what becomes available to you.
Right.
How you start to see the world. So, Jim, we're going to start to wrap this up. And I wanted to ask you if there was anything that you wanted the listeners to leave with around this theme called happiness. What would that be? What is some important points that you want people to leave with today?
Well, one is something that I said earlier, and that is a reminder that happiness is not a place to live. It's a place to visit. And if you want to nurture it in yourself, find ways to access it and really appreciate it when you're there. So, write down your gratitudes, make joy lists, practice a body of happiness. When you are looking at any situation, regularly ask yourself, in addition to what's wrong and what needs to be fixed, also ask yourself, what's right? What's good here? So those are a lot of different ways that you can just practice in your head, in your heart, in your body, finding the place. The other bit of wisdom that I'd urge people to walk away with is to understand that it's not a destination. It's not a place to get to. It's all of those other tips were really to help you show up and be in it. So it's a way you can travel along the road. But the destination isn't happiness. Isn't the mountain that's far away. Happiness is the way you can choose to walk along the road on the way to the mountain.
Ooh, that's a nice visual. That's really nice. So it's like the quality of the journey.
It is the quality of the journey.
Yeah.
And just like any other journey, recognizing that, there's sometimes when you need to access other energies on that journey. And sometimes you're tired, not available to you. So choose, be aware of it. and visit it often, and you'll find that it comes back to you easier every time, the more that you practice it.
I just have a quick question that just came to my mind. Have you ever encountered, and then we will wrap it up, right? Have you ever encountered happiness as a limitation?
Yes. Yes. And I always chuckle every time I read an article about toxic happiness and, we've missed the boat by pursuing happiness. And 99% of the time when I read those articles, they're saying exactly the same thing I am. They're pointing out to people that it's not a place to live, and that one of the issues with our world is that we have so many people who are so busy chasing a specific version of happiness, which is the very superficial happiness, the the acquisition of material things, or getting acknowledgement from other people, all the stuff. It's not about engagement with life. It's not about finding your purpose. It's the I know I'll be happy when I get a divorce. I know I'll be happy when I get married. I know I'll be happy when I own a red car. I know I'll be happy if I eat chocolate, which are all valid forms of happiness, but none of them contributes to lasting happiness.
Ah, so it's all circumstantial. It's all dictated by something outside of me.
Right, right. It's all outside of you. So when you can learn to access happiness as something that's inside of you, that
Yeah.
you are engaged with, that's what you want to take with you on your travel.
Ah, I love it. Oh my gosh, Jim, love hanging out with you. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom. We're going to wrap this up. Thanks everyone for joining us. Practice, practice, practice. And we'll see you in our next conversation.